Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Greetings to you, music lovers, thrill seekers, conversationalists all across the... What? Oh, yeah, I do. I think I've got a solution to all of this. In a few minutes, I will get there. I've been thinking about this. Anyway, folks, great to have you here. There is soon to begin in the White House, and we're not going to jip this. Trump administration's got to learn you don't start things at 12 noon. This program's going to start no matter what they're doing there. There's a joint press conference being held with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and the President, Donald Trump. By the way, great to see the Prime Minister of Israel in Washington in the first month of a new administration and arriving and probably leaving through the front door. As you know, Obama made Netanyahu leave the back door a couple times after slapping him down, after making him work on a proposal while Obama went up to dinner. There was a clear disrespect from Obama to the Israelis and Netanyahu, which is, of course, not happening today. If anything does happen at this joint presser, we'll, of course, jip it. Our microphones are there, and we're ready to if anything happens. But these joint pressers do not lend themselves to the singular press conference where the jackals get to have at Trump, and Trump gets his turn going back at them. Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882, and the email address, ilrushwell@eibnet.com. All right, I think it's been pretty much established what's going on here now in terms of the whole Michael Flynn situation. It's pretty much documented that what's driving this is the fact that the Democrat Party really doesn't exist as an electoral operation. It doesn't function as an entity that wins elections. And because in the sense that there is no Democrat Party, there is no way that the Democrat Party can be the opposition party anymore. They don't have the strength or the numbers to be the opposition party, unless, of course, Republicans cross the aisle and join them. There just isn't any there. The Democrats are down 1,200, 1,300 seats. They only run 5 states. They literally are a regional political party, and the battles that they're having internally to come up with a new chairman are an embarrassment. The Democrat Party really, really is dwindling away before our eyes. But don't misunderstand me. It's precisely because of this that the unelected Democrat Party, which is embedded in our nation's bureaucracy, has taken over the role of the opposition party. And by that, I mean all of the Obama appointees in the intelligence community, all of the Obama and Clinton appointees at the Departments of Justice, Departments of State, and the Defense Department. They are all there, and they are working to sabotage the administration of Donald Trump from within. They are doing this with the aid and cooperation of the media. Now, the media isn't who they used to be either, just as the Democrat Party is really not a functioning political party. Now, don't misunderstand me on this. I'm not saying that they've been defeated forever and gone away, but as currently constituted, they are not an opposition force that can stop anything. They simply don't have the numbers in the House, in the Senate. In the true representative republic sense of our country, they don't have any power. And so they have to turn the country into something other than a representative republic, something other than a democracy, which is what they are doing. And which is why what they are doing is far more dangerous than anything Flynn may or may not have done. It's far more dangerous than anything Flynn may or may not have said. And this effort to deconstruct and transform this country began in earnest with Barack Hussein Obama, and it continues from the shadows of the embedded bureaucrats all throughout, not just the federal government, in the judiciary, and in certain levels of state government. And in this sense, our country today is not functioning as a representative republic. give you the idea, or give you an idea of how this can be envisioned. In the old days, and these are not too far long ago, and it's still the way I operate, by the way, I come in here, do my program every day, and you are the audience. And my objective here each and every day for 30 years, 29, whatever it is, has been to reach you, to inform you, to educate you, and to hopefully persuade you to agree with my side of things, so that when there are elections that you go out and vote the way I do, because that's what I'm here for. I believe that what I believe is right, and I want as many people believing it. And so I'm taking the advantage of the opportunity I have, which I have earned via hard work in the capitalist system. I have this microphone, and I have 600 plus radio stations, and I have my shot at you. I have an opportunity. You're free and clear to reject it, go away and not listen. You're free and clear to accept it and act on it. In the old days, this is what the drive-by media did as well. The media's audience used to be you. The media's audience used to be the voters. And the media used to be in that same arena that I find myself in. You see, I don't have any other power. I don't have any power. In fact, I don't even function with a consciousness of any power that I have. I look at what I have as an opportunity. I have an opportunity each and every day to tell you what I think is the truth, and to try to persuade as many of you as I can to see this country as I do, to try to preserve it as I wish it preserved. But beyond that, I don't have any power. I can't decide that somebody in office needs to be destroyed and go do it. But the media can now. See, I can't, and nobody else in conservative media can do this. But the media long ago abandoned any pretense of having the objective be to bend and shape public opinion. They lost that battle when we came along and busted up their monopoly. So now the media operates in a totally different plane, a totally different sphere. The media no longer trying to shape public opinion or inform public opinion so that the people in our representative republic determine the course of events. The media long ago stopped trusting you, and instead the media has thrown in with a political party. Now, they've always been tight with them, but now it's official. The media has thrown in, not just with the Democrat Party, the media has thrown in with the Barack Obama shadow government and the Barack Obama administration. And the media's objective now has nothing to do with informing you. Their objective now, I mean, they want you to be misinformed. I mean, they are still reporting fake news, made up news. They are lying about things, hoping to make it easier for them and the Obama shadow government to eventually get rid of Trump and everybody in his administration. Now, they ultimately, eventually will need public support for this because, as I say, the Democrats do not have the votes to say impeach, to convict Donald Trump. But that's not where they're focused. They're focused on things like Flynn resigning and then other scalps coming along. And the media no longer is in the arena of ideas. Forget that. The media has thrown in with the Barack Obama shadow government. Now, the thing that is propelling this assault on Trump is a story that even the people reporting it admit there's no evidence for. There is one thing, and I'm just trying to simplify this for you, there is one thing that keeps propelling this story forward, and it is that the Russians stole the election for Trump by hacking the Democrat National Committee and its servers and John Podesta's email. There's no evidence. In fact, you can state with ontological certitude that the Russians had no impact whatsoever on the outcome of the election. It wouldn't have been possible. But even if you want to live that lie and say that they did, then you would have to say they wanted Hillary Clinton because she won the popular vote. And that's about all any outside force could hope to affect. When you start trying to hack and manipulate outcomes in the Electoral College battle, there isn't a single source anywhere that can do that. Otherwise, if somebody had figured that out, whoever that guy is with would always win. So the lie that is the engine and the fuel for all of this that we're going through is that this election was illegitimate, that the Russians hacked it, and furthermore, that Trump and his campaign staff were in regular contact with the Russians during the campaign. This story has run twice now in the New York Times, and both times the New York Times admits that there is no evidence whatsoever. They have no evidence. It's akin to the seriousness of the charge being so grave that we must continue to look into it. There is no evidence for the primary assertion that is driving this entire attack on Trump. This attack is coming from the shadows of the deep state, where former Obama employees remain in the intelligence community, and that would be at the CIA, that would be at the Defense Intelligence Agency, that would be where at the National Security Agency. They are there. They were not elected. They were appointed. Maybe Bill Clinton put them in there, and they have remained, and it is they who are leaking elements of, say, the Flynn phone call with the Russian ambassador. They are not providing a transcript of the entire call. They are only presenting excerpts they want us to see. It's kind of like the way NBC edited the 9/11 call of the white Hispanic George Zimmerman in the Trayvon Martin case. It's much akin to what happened to me during my 60 Minutes profile. They collect hours and hours of videotape, and then they alone decide what they're going to use and what they're going to cut. Same thing with this phone call, Flynn and the Russian ambassador. They won't release the whole transcript because they know the whole transcript does not help them. The whole transcript does, in fact, my guess is the entire transcript of that call would undercut the illusion that they are trying to present. And that is that Flynn gave assurances to the Russian ambassador on the very day Obama expelled 35 Russian diplomats. Don't sweat it. Soon as Trump's in there, the sanctions are lifted and your guys are back. That there is no evidence whatsoever that that was ever discussed or said in a direct fashion, and yet the news stories every day are trying to convince you that that is exactly what happened, and that furthermore, there's even more damning news and damaging news to come. So what we are living in the midst of here is, and this, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I warned everybody that this is who Barack Obama is, and this is what he was going to do. The only thing I was wrong about was the technique. I thought Obama would be on TV bitching and moaning about Obamacare being unraveled. Obama's not on TV. His embedded employees are doing the dirty work, and they are leaking to people in the media. But they're not leaking to people in the media. They're leaking to friends. They're leaking to compatriots. The people in the media are the neighbors and the friends, some cases having affairs with the people in the intel community that are doing the leaking. It is a symbiotic, incestuous relationship within the Washington establishment, and they are all aligned. They do not like the result of an open and free election. They cannot accept it. They have constructed this lie to assure themselves that they didn't lose, and that is that the Russians tampered, the Russians hacked, that Trump worked with the Russians, and that they and Hillary and the Democrats got screwed out of what is rightfully theirs, and that is never-ending entitlement to power. They reject an election. They reject and hold in contempt the people who voted in that election and are now trying to reverse the results of that election in as undemocratic and un-American a manner as could exist short of a military coup. And they are doing this in consort with the American media, which is not media, meaning they are not competing for your opinions. They're not competing for your support. They're not in the arena of ideas. They're on the side of the embedded shadow government attempting to destroy political opponents they don't like. This is the kind of thing that happens in Cuba, banana republics, Venezuela, lesser developed nations that don't even make a pretense at democracy or representative republicanism or anything of the sort. And I mentioned at the top of the program, and by the way, I'm going to get into all of this with supportive evidence and detail as the program unfolds. But what's the solution to this for Trump? What's to be done? Have you seen the story, by the way, that the IRS is going to stop examining your answers to questions on health care going forward? Yeah, the IRS is not good. You know why? Donald Trump made that happen with an executive order affecting Obamacare. The IRS, okay, well, we don't have to ask you these questions, whether you've got insurance anymore. We're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to ask. That's because of an executive order, Donald Trump. Donald Trump's success stories are on the domestic side. And there's some success stories here with international policy, too. I mean, every foreign leader that comes to visit Trump loves him, sings his praises, has the greatest time with him, feels a renewed respect from the United States of America. There was a meeting of CEOs and business people today, and they came out of the meeting with Trump just loving what had happened. First time they'd ever been invited to the White House. Small business people and so forth. So the stuff that's actually happening, the thing that Trump's doing, it's a home run with the people who are affected by it. But you're not hearing about it very much. We'll take care of that today, too. But therein lies the answer, the solution for Trump on this stuff. And he'd better do it quickly, too. It's the only way he's going to keep the Republicans in Congress on his side. I'll explain as the program unfolds. I saw Snerdley make a mad dash to the computer when I told you the IRS was going to stop requiring people to indicate whether they maintained health coverage or not. Don't bother looking it up. It's right here. You can find it at the Drudge Report. It's at Reason.com. The IRS, in a major blow to the Obamacare mandate, the IRS will not reject tax returns that don't answer health insurance questions. This is, you have to answer whether you have health insurance or not. And if you don't, you're subject to a fine or some other penalty. They're going to stop asking the question. They're going to stop requiring you to answer it. And the reason for this is that Donald Trump has already made a move toward the unraveling of Obamacare. His executive order instructing agencies to provide relief from Obamacare, the Internal Revenue Service has decided that they're going to follow the executive order. They're going to take a more lax approach to the coverage requirement, and you're not going to suffer a penalty if you don't have Obamacare. This is a huge blow to the mandate. It's not full-fledged. It isn't legislative rollback, but it's a big move. All right, they've gone to Q&A at the press conference, and Trump is calling on Katie Pavlich of Town Hall. He's not calling on the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, and they're getting ticked. They're getting angrier and angrier, and this is one of the ways Trump is fighting back. Let me review for you what's happened so far in the press conference, because it has elements here that relate to what's going on with this foreign policy shadow government attempted coup against Trump. Starts out calling Netanyahu his friend. That's big. Netanyahu has not been a friend of the United States government for 8 years. Do not doubt me. That's big. Then Trump began talking about the Iran deal and how his administration will stop Iran from ever developing a nuke. It's interesting that that was mentioned early on. I'll tell you why. Because one of the multiple stories that cannot be confirmed, there is so much speculation, there is so much imagination, there is so much leaking, there's so many people lying. There's so many reporters not caring what's true and what isn't. As long as it can cast doubt and cast a shadow on Trump, they're happy to report it. One of the things that they are reporting is that the shadow government that Obama has, led by Ben Rhodes, who is one of his primary advisors, and whose brother is at CBS News, as an aside, one of the things that the drive-bys are reporting that cannot be confirmed. It's another one of these things that's, it's not really a leak. Some drive-bys claim they have Obama people telling them this, but it's strange. It's a tough thing to, but I'll just tell you what it is. According to noted drive-by media people, the primary reason that Obama has established this shadow government is to protect his nuclear deal with Iran. Supposedly, there are secrets in this Iran deal that if they were to ever be learned, the American people would be outraged. And Trump, even before today, has made clear that this Iran deal is not going to see the light of day, that the Iranians are never going to get a nuclear weapon. So one of the many addendums to the primary focus that Trump's in trouble because the Russians stole the election and he worked with them. That's the real fake news driving this. One of the subsets is that Obama is desperate to protect the Iran deal, and they do not want Trump getting anywhere near revising it or even exposing it. We don't know what the secrets are. We don't know what's so devastating in the deal that if these details are to be learned, that there would be hell to pay. All we know is that one of the primary justifications for the deep state, the embedded Obama shadow government to sabotage Trump, is to protect the nuclear deal that Obama made with Iran. And so Trump opening this presser, pretty much saying, screw Iran, they're never going to get a nuclear weapon while I'm in the White House, is this is Trump throwing the gauntlet down to these people. This is Trump in his own way joining the battle. The problem is they're all working in the shadows. We don't see them. We don't know who they are. Well, we do. Not by name, but we know where they are, and we know the kind of people they are, and we know that they do not share the vision of this country as founded, as you and I do. They share Obama's vision that this country is illegal, that this country is unjust, that this country has created most of the problems in the world, and it's our responsibility to fix them. We're guilty. Obama found a lot of people think just like he does, and he put them in the intelligence community. Can you imagine? When you think of the intelligence community, don't you think of super patriots? Don't you think of people out there doing even risking their lives to defend and protect the Constitution and the people of this country, and this country itself is founded? No. That's not the kind of people Obama put at the CIA. Remember, the left corrupts everything, folks. The Democrat Party, the left, corrupts every institution. They politicize it, and by virtue of that alone, they corrupt it. And so at the NSA, at the Defense Intelligence Agency, at the CIA, and at the FBI, there are Obamaites. There are people that think like he and like Eric Holder. There are people all over this administration, this federal government, embedded as unelected bureaucrats who are there to defend and protect whatever Obama had begun. And it doesn't matter that Democrats lost the election. It doesn't matter that Trump won. It doesn't matter that 63 million people voted for Trump, because those people are held in contempt. You are held in contempt by these people embedded. These are establishment types. So Trump coming out and openly claiming talking about the Iran deal, that his administration is going to stop Iran from ever developing a nuke. I don't know what these secrets are, but if they're that deep, if they're that bad, it's obviously got to be based on Iran getting a nuclear weapon, doesn't it? Isn't that the one thing you and I would not tolerate if we knew was in the deal? Trump has already enacted sanctions against Iran because they launched missiles. He said the United States will help make a good peace deal, stands with Israel against the struggle for terrorism. Netanyahu thanked Trump and Melania for the warm welcome and the hospitality. He said he deeply values the USA. So that's how the thing began. And they're now getting questions. And Trump is not calling on the traditional ABC, CBS, NBC people, at least when I was watching. He hadn't. In addition to that, Trump met with retailers today. This morning at the White House, he said that tax reform is the best way to influence the economy. Right after Trump said that, the Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped up 30 points. And at the time the show began, it was still rallying. What Trump wants, and he said this in the meeting with the retailers, lower regulations. He wants more jobs. The retailers told him they're against the border tax, kind of like it's a 20% VAT tax, and that Trump supports. They don't want that tax, and they told him that. It's also a Republican plan to tax imported products. It looks like a tariff, walks like a tariff. It is a tariff. Nobody's calling it a tariff. They're calling it the border tax. Some of the people at the retail meeting, Joann Fabrics, Target, AutoZone, The Gap, Tractor Supply, J.C. Penney. And they said, the AutoZone guy said, well, I've never been here. I've never been to the White House. Nobody's ever cared what I thought. So Trump had another successful meeting today with another segment of the United States economy that found itself suffering under the 8 years of the Obama administration. They come out of the meeting with Trump and they're just happy as they can be. As it seems like everybody who meets with him is. Prime Minister of Japan, Netanyahu, the list goes on. I'm just going to cut to the chase here and then take a break. I'm going to backtrack to the details that I have assembled for my effort to explain to you what's going on with this Michael Flynn and the deep state embedded coup that is taking place. But if I've had one person ask me, I've had 1,000. What should Trump do, Rush? What can he do? What can we do? How can we stop this? I'll tell you what I think the best thing Donald Trump could do. Just focus on repealing Obamacare and then focus on tax reform and then just move full speed ahead on the domestic agenda. Make tracks. Do it obviously. Bring in people, have meetings, bring the Republicans up, the Democrats up, as the president in a room telling them this is why we were all elected, it's why you lost. This is what we're going to do. Work together to move these tax cuts forward. Reform the tax code. Repeal Obamacare. None of this, oh, man, I don't know, 2 years. Just do it. If Trump would engage at full speed on his domestic agenda, which is why he was elected, then his people will stay with him no matter what this Obama shadow government tries. And his people is all Trump has. He doesn't have the media with him like Obama did. He has the media trying to destroy him. Trump has his voters. There are 60-some-odd million people that voted for Trump. In a Gallup poll today, 62% said they believe Trump is honest and is trying to keep his promises. Now, right now, Trump is interested in foreign policy, international policy, with NATO and the Middle East situation, things going on with Russia and all that. And in that, we have trade issues, which were a big part of the Trump campaign. But I'm telling you, folks, if Donald Trump didn't forget all this, if he just moved forthwith, moving that domestic agenda, if Donald Trump said, you know, I'm seeing what you're seeing. I'm seeing people say, well, we might not be able to do Obamacare till next year. I myself even said that. But you know what? We're going to move faster. I've heard people say tax reform, it's going to take a while. We're going to move on it. put the onus on the Congress to join him here. He was the one elected. They got elected on his coattails. There are some Republicans in the House and Senate who won on their own. I don't want to take anything away from them. But most Republicans, and I'm going to tell you straight here, most Republicans running for either the House or the Senate expected Hillary to win. They went into Election Day thinking they were going to be the minority party. They went into Election Day thinking they were going to lose. Donald Trump won and made them the majority. They are in the majority because Donald Trump won the presidency. Donald Trump needs to get in a room with them and bring them along however he seeks to persuade them. I'm not saying he needs to read the riot act to them. I'm not saying he needs to wag a finger. I'm saying he just needs to remind them why we're all here. Back to the basics. Start redoing the campaign. Move that domestic agenda forward. Well, not forsaking any. Keep meeting with Netanyahu and keep doing what you're doing, but don't get sucked into what the shadow government of Obama is trying to do. Get your legal people on it. Let your people deal with them in that regard. Continue to tweet about them if you want, but you move that domestic agenda forward, and Donald Trump's supporters will never abandon him. And there will be nothing the drive-by media can do to make them abandon him. And how do I know? Because he survived everything they and everybody else threw at him during the campaign. He survived an Access Hollywood video. He survived everything. Because it was so important to the people who supported him that he win. It was so important that he go to Washington and do what he said in the campaign he was going to do. Well, it's time. It's time to do it. Keep those people on your side, Mr. Trump. They will never abandon you, no matter what your opposition tries. And at the end of the day, the opposition is going to need your supporters to abandon you. And that's what they are relentlessly seeking to do. Not by persuading them. The media is not trying to persuade Trump supporters that Trump's a reprobate. What they're trying to do is convince Trump supporters it's pointless to hang on. It's pointless to support Trump because there's no way he can survive. They are trying to get you to give up and abandon Trump. And that would isolate him. The way Trump fights all this, in my humble estimation, full speed ahead, domestic agenda, items on which he campaigned, items that formed the basis of his shocking presidential victory. We'll be right back after this. Do not go away. Okay, a couple of bites here from the just concluded press conference. I've detected a pattern here. You have a joint press conference with Trump and a world leader, and they get it done in 20 minutes. They make their joint statement, their separate statements, and then there are 4 questions. Trump got 2 questions, and Netanyahu got 2 questions from his press contingent, and when it's over, Trump walks out, and that's it. And not one question from the New York Times, CBS, or NBC that I saw, anyway. We have a couple of bites. First question was from Christian Broadcasting Network correspondent David Broad. Oh, you know how that's going to tick him off. I mean, the drive-bys are ticked off. He's in the room in the first place. A Christian broadcast guy? Come on. Trump, what are you doing to us here? His question was this. Both of you have criticized the Iran nuclear deal, and at times you've even called for its repeal. I'm wondering if you're concerned at all as it relates to not just the National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, but also some of those events that have been going on with the communication to Russia, if that's going to hamper this deal at all, and whether or not it'll keep Iran from becoming a nuclear state. And on the settlement issue, are you two on the same page?
General Flynn is a wonderful man. I think he's been treated very, very unfairly by the media, as I call it, the fake media in many cases. And I think it's really a sad thing that he was treated so badly. I think in addition to that, from intelligence, papers are being leaked, things are being leaked. It's criminal action, criminal act, and it's been going on for a long time before me. But now it's really going on. And people are trying to cover up for a terrible loss that the Democrats had under Hillary Clinton. I think it's very, very unfair what's happened to General Flynn, the way he was treated, and the documents and papers that were illegally, I stress that, illegally leaked.
Then why did you ask him to leave? You know, I've got a problem, but I have to tell you, folks, with all of this praise for Flynn, why did he go? If the media is mistreating Flynn, then why did he go? There's more here, obviously, and I, El Rushbo, will be able to explain it to you. Next question was actually it's an exchange between Trump and Netanyahu.
As far as settlements, I'd like to see you hold back on settlements for a little bit. We'll work something out, but I would like to see a deal be made. I think a deal will be made. But Bibi and I have known each other a long time. A smart man, great negotiator. And I think we're going to make a deal. It might be a bigger and better deal than people in this room even understand. That's a possibility. So let's see what we do.
Let's try it.
Doesn't sound too optimistic, but that's he's a good negotiator.
That's the art of the deal.
That's the art of the deal. So they obviously get along quite well, and we haven't seen this in 8 years. It's our number one ally in the Middle East, and we're getting along with them again, folks. We're actually got mutual respect instead of having a spoiled little kid president who thinks Israel, along with the United States, represents the problem in the Middle East. Nice to see this change. Hang on. Be right back. Do we need any more evidence? Obamacare is an historic disaster. Humana has now announced they're going to drop out of Obamacare at the end of this year. It's imploding right before our eyes. Finish it off, President Trump. Finish it off. Get going. Back here in just a second, folks. Hi, folks. Thanks and welcome back. A little message for those of you that are on hold. I know it works out this way more often than not. There's just a lot of stuff to get to today. Once I get started on it, I feel compelled to finish it. And start when you finish. I'm one of those kind of guys. And it's detailed, and it's frequent, and there are updates, all these different news stories. I mean, it's a breakneck pace out there. And I have this compulsion to keep you up to speed with the latest that I know. So those of you on hold, if just hang on, I appreciate it. We'll get to you usual time. I mean, it's going to be in this hour, this half hour probably. I just wanted to acknowledge I know you're there. I want to now delve back into the specifics of what is going on in the deep state, the embedded bureaucracy where the Obama shadow government is doing everything it can to overthrow the Trump presidency. And make no mistake, that is what's happening. And make no mistake that the media has thrown in with it. The media is now doing the bidding of the Obama shadow government. The remaining Obama administration members, all of the intelligence agencies at the Defense Department, at the State Department, all of these people leaking made up things, non-factual things that allow the media to continue to run stories that are nothing but speculation, that fall under the rubric of the seriousness of the charge. And it really, whatever Flynn did, whatever Flynn is alleged to have done, pales in comparison to what's happening to our country by the Obama shadow government. And I choose to word it that way because that's what it is. It's a bunch of former Obama bureaucrats that he put in the various agencies that didn't leave when he did. Clinton has some people that are still there, and this is how the left operates. Because, folks, the Democrat Party has ceased to function as an opposition force. The Democrat Party really, without the assistance of the media, can't stop anything. They don't have the numbers. They have lost over 1,000 seats. You know the drill. The Obama shadow government, the deep state, and all of the leftist judges throughout our judiciary make up now the official opposition to the portion of our country that believes in America as founded. And look at what's happened here in just the span of 1 week. If I may put this all in perspective for you. In the span of 1 week, we have seen left-wing tyrannical courts seize control of immigration. In the span of 1 week, we have seen left-wing tyrannical bureaucrats attempt to seize control over national security. Articles 1 and 2 of the Constitution. In this same week, we have rogue leftists and Obama administration leftovers in the intelligence community, violating civil rights and exposing intelligence gathering methods and leaking all kinds of national security secrets in criminal acts. This indeed is action in violation of federal statute. We have read that there are indications of the undermining of the Trump presidency by Barack Obama and his shadow government and by his network of 250 community organizing chapters. Now, this sabotage, and make no mistake, it's what it is. The sabotage of the Trump administration began well before Mike Flynn's resignation. It began well before Donald Trump was inaugurated. The attempt to sabotage the Trump administration can be traced back to even prior to the election. But you can certainly trace it back to after the election, when the New York Times first ran its story that elements of the Trump campaign were in contact with officials in Russia during the presidential campaign. That's the only story. There is no evidence. There is just an allegation that Trump campaign officials, and who they mean by this is Paul Manafort. Now, Paul Manafort, former campaign manager, he was the first one. Paul Manafort has been doing business in Russia long before he ever started working for Trump. So you take a little irrelevant, indiscriminate fact over here, then you take the Trump campaign here, and you put the two together where they don't fit, and you've got a news story. And you've got Trump officials talking to Russian officials during the campaign, which the media insists the Russians hacked. There's no evidence for that. There's never been. It's cut and dry. There's never, ever been any evidence that the Russians had anything to do with the outcome of the election. There's no evidence, and if you look very closely, you don't find that specific allegation, because the people who are making the allegation know full well it didn't happen. The Russians had nothing to do with who won the presidency. It had nothing to do whatsoever with it. There isn't any evidence to suggest it. Not in terms of the vote, not in terms of casting ballots, not in terms of counting ballots. The Russians had nothing to do with it. Now, the Russians did try to hack both parties' political career networks, their computer networks. They apparently failed at hacking the Republican network, but they succeeded hacking the DNC and the email account of John Podesta. And those things were put on WikiLeaks, and it was said the Russians did it. The Russians did the hack, and the Russians gave the data to WikiLeaks, who then ran it. The guy at WikiLeaks said, no, we didn't get it from the Russians. He said if he said it once, he said it 20 times. The point is there's a bogus allegation that is fueling all of this. The Flynn resignation, the Flynn controversy, everything about this that you've seen in the last however long you've been watching, 2 days, 3 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it is all fueled by the New York Times leading the pack for the Democrat Party to assert that the election was hacked by the Russians. The Russians worked together with Donald Trump to screw Hillary Clinton out of the presidency. It is a lie that they have told themselves so much, I actually now think they believe it. I think they actually believe they cannot accept the fact that they were rejected. They can't accept the fact that their boy wonder Barack Obama was rejected. He just can't. That doesn't compute. So they're unable to accept the hard, cold reality of what happened all during the campaign and the election. And so they've constructed this alternative reality with alternate facts. And this whole Flynn story is predicated on that assumption. The Russians hacked, that Trump helped them, and Hillary lost. And even in the news stories reporting this, you will find the phrase, investigators have found no evidence to conclude or to prove. So all there are conclusions. Conclusions by analysts who've looked at the evidence and who are concluding. But conclusions are just somebody's random thoughts. They are not evidence in any way, shape, manner, or form. New York Times today, no evidence. The Trump campaign colluded with the Russians in hacking the Democrat National Committee and the election. It's right there in their story. It's buried. It's way at the end of this. You'll not see it unless it's pointed out to you, but it's right there. No evidence the Trump campaign colluded with. No evidence yet. Yes, we must continue to investigate. We must continue to look. We must continue to listen to our people in the deep state, the embedded bureaucrats at the intelligence agencies, departments of state and defense, who are continuing to look deep to see if they can find the link between the Trump campaign and the Russians and the hacking. As of now, no evidence. New York Times has run this story twice. They ran the story last fall. They ran it again yesterday and the day before. Last night, the New York Times put out a breaking news alert. I happened to receive it. Intercepted calls show members of the Trump campaign had repeated contact with Russian intelligence before the election. This breaking news went out last night around 9:15. I was minding my own business, bothering nobody. And I get this alert. And I looked and I knew immediately that it was a crock. I knew immediately that this is bogus because intercepted calls, this is the intercepted call. One of these intercepted calls is the call between Flynn and the Russian ambassador, for which they will not release the full transcript. So we have to trust those who have heard the transcript of the call. And why was there a transcript of the call, you might ask? Very simple. The National Security Agency has been bugging the Russian ambassador. We've been following. It's what we do. They're an enemy. The Russians are an enemy. The Iranians are an enemy. We keep track of them. And so Flynn called the Russian ambassador, so they heard the call. And I'm here to tell you, if they heard Flynn openly say anything about sanctions being removed, if they had heard Flynn, they would have touted this when it happened. This is all speculation. Intercepted calls show members of the Trump campaign had repeated contact with Russian intelligence before the election, officials said. It is unadulterated McCarthyism. They're going to take Trump out from the get-go. They are making no bones about it. But if you read further, what you find is there isn't actually any evidence. This is a fake breaking news alert. It's designed to pollute the minds of people who read it, who will never read the full story and who will never read. Analysts have yet to find any evidence linking the two. All we have are officials suggesting that intercepted calls show repeated contact. Well, there's nothing unusual about repeated contact, if you know anything about this. This hit piece that ran yesterday in the New York Times was titled, "Trump Campaign Aides Had Repeated Contacts with Russian Intelligence." And they cite more leaked intelligence information targeting Trump that shows repeated contacts with senior Russian intelligence officials in the year before the election. The implied allegations obvious. Trump colluded with the Russians to take down Clinton and thus steal the presidency. There's just one problem here, folks. It's a 1,300-word article. In the third paragraph, the New York Times admits that its sources, quote, said that so far they had seen no evidence of such cooperation. Well, then why run the freaking alert last night? When in the third paragraph of the story following the alert, you will find so far they had seen no evidence of cooperation. Oh, close. So last night we got a breaking news alert that experts monitoring intercepts have found contact between Trump campaign officials and Russian officials. Sound the alarm bells. And then if you read the actual story the next day, it happens to be yesterday, you find out that in the third paragraph, the New York Times admits that its sources, these officials who had seen the intercepts, said that so far they had seen no evidence of such cooperation. That's a bogus story, then. There's nothing to follow. There's no reason to print, no reason to go with it, no reason to run it, no reason to believe it. If there is no evidence of any collusion between Trump and his team and the Russians, then what the hell was the purpose of the breaking news alert last night, which reads, intercepted calls show members of the Trump campaign had repeated contact with Russian intelligence before the election. Third paragraph. So far, they have seen no evidence of such cooperation. They had to put it in the story. If they didn't put it in the story, they could be brought up. It is. But the damage is done because the breaking news alert last night filled CNN and their morning news show today, filled Fox and Friends. It was all over the place. MSNBC. The New York Times says that there was collusion. And the New York Times alert said that, but the story didn't. And this is the second time they've done this. This same exact story. I compared the two. Occurred last fall. Almost the identical story. And in both stories, there have yet developed any evidence of collusion. So in 4 months, they have not been able to unearth, even with the help of the Obama shadow government, they have been unable to unearth any hard evidence of collusion. It doesn't matter. They are reporting that there was contact between Trump officials and Russian officials because what's driving this is the Russians hacked the election working with Trump to steal it from the legitimate should-have-been winner, Hillary Clinton. Another headline, FBI probing Russian intel contacts with several Trump campaign officials. And here it is again. The officials interviewed in recent weeks said that so far they had seen no evidence of such collusion. You want to hear what comes before this? Phone records and intercepted calls show that members of the Trump presidential campaign and other Trump associates had repeated contacts with senior Russian intelligence officials in the year before the election, according to 4 current and former American officials. The intelligence agencies then sought to learn whether the Trump campaign was colluding with the Russians or just contacting them. The officials interviewed in recent weeks said that so far they had seen no evidence of such cooperation. The probes started with the FBI concern over Russian hacking of the DNC and John Podesta as an attempt to sway the election. So far, though, the investigation can't even determine if the contacts were about the election at all. They can't even tell us that the Trump people talking to the Russians was even about the election. And yet look at the news stories and look at the cable news networks bouncing off of this and look at what you now probably think because of it. You are being lied to on purpose and with full-fledged knowledge of the people lying to you. And they're doing this under the guise of presenting to you news. Back in just a second. Now, I mentioned to you that this is the second New York Times story. I want to read to you from the same story that they ran back in October. Are you ready? For much of the summer, the FBI pursued a widening investigation into a Russian role in the American presidential campaign. This before the election, folks, this last October. Agents scrutinized advisors close to Trump, looked for financial connections with Russian financial figures, searched for those involved in hacking the computers of the Democrats, and they even chased a lead, which they ultimately came to doubt, about a possible secret channel of email communication from the Trump organization to a Russian bank. Law enforcement officials say that none of the investigations so far have found any conclusive or direct link between Mr. Trump and the Russian government. And even the hacking into Democrat emails, FBI and intel officials now believe was aimed at disrupting the presidential election rather than electing Mr. Trump. That's from last October. They just redid the story this week, adding Flynn to it and continuing the flying premise. Great to have you back here, folks. We're going to get to the phones here, but I'm not through with the New York Times. I'm not near through with the New York Times. There's even more in this New York Times story about all of this that demonstrates how the so-called deep state, which I'm now calling the Obama shadow government, is attempting to sabotage Trump and his administration. But I got to get to the phones first, and we're going to start in right here, West Palm Beach. Gina, great to have you on the program. Welcome.
Hi, Rush. Nice talking to you. I've been
Same
listening
here.
for a long time. First time I've ever got in.
Well, I'm glad you did.
So I want to make a point that all throughout the campaign and the election, nobody ever brought up Podesta's ties with the Russian government, the fact that he is involved in consulting deals on wind, et cetera, making $30 to $40 million a year. Nobody ever once brought up Clinton's ties to the Russian government and her uranium deals. That never got brought up. Yet any little thing that Trump's campaign or even talked, it gets blown out of proportion. I'm sick to my stomach over what's happening to this country. The media is roadblocking Trump and his administration in every which way possible. And not that anything is illegal or illegitimate. It's just they're digging and digging, and it roadblocks.
No, wait a minute, Gina, just a second here. There is a whole lot of illegality going. All of this leaking is illegal. Every damn bit of it's illegal. The procuring of the information that is being leaked is illegal. There are a lot of people engaging in criminal behavior in order to bring these leaks to the drive-by media. Now,
you're on the Trump administration side. I mean, we're digging up a 200-year-old law that has never once been enforced, and they're trying to wiggle and weave and take a fine line and try to.
What are you talking about? The Logan Act?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the Logan Act has never been prosecuted. No, nobody's ever been prosecuted under it, and they're hanging their hats on it, or trying to.
They're trying to, but I'm sure you know what was actually said and what wasn't. You know, like you said, we're getting excerpts. And what does this do to Trump? It takes up time. He hasn't been able to issue another executive order on the immigrant ban. He can't do tax reform. We can't take our Supreme Court nominee.
Let me ask you a question. Are you getting close to getting frustrated and abandoning Trump?
Absolutely not.
All right.
100%.
I knew that. I just wanted to make sure.
I am absolutely beginning to abandon all government almost. I mean, we've got McCain. We've got Lindsey Graham. We have all these people working against the American people.
See, this is my point. Gina, thank you so much for calling because you've helped me to come up with another point. I started the program here by pointing out to you, and I did this for a reason, folks. I wasn't just, being sentimental. The way I do this job, I come here every day. I've earned this microphone. Nobody gave this to me. I've earned this microphone. I use it each day to enter the arena of ideas, and that is to do whatever I can to persuade you to agree with me. I mean, that's what I'm doing here. I passionately care about things. I mean, there are many things going on here. I'm trying to attract a crowd, hold the crowd, and all that. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, I'm trying to persuade people. I make no bones about it. But that's all I can do. You still are free to vote however you want. There's no amount of power over you I have. I don't even contemplate having power. And that used to be what the media did, too. The media used to work in the arena of ideas. The media used to present the news, and you would read the news, and you would learn what you learned from it. But that hadn't been the case for the longest time. The media is no longer, well, they're trying to persuade, but now the media has even abandoned the arena of ideas, and they've joined with a political party. And the media is not about the arena of ideas. The media is not about persuading. The media is about overcoming the will of the people. The media has joined forces with the Democrat Party, members of the Democrat Party, and the extreme radical left in the United States to advance the extreme radical leftist agenda. I don't have that kind of power. I don't seek to use this microphone, this program, to unseat elected officials, other than at elections. But the media has joined forces with unelected bureaucrats who are actively engaged in attempting to unseat members of the Trump administration and Trump in an effort to undermine a free and fair election in the United States last November. That is big, if you ask me. And it's an area in which I am not competing. I wouldn't know the first thing about it. It wouldn't even cross my mind, but that's who the media is now. They're not about news. They're not about persuading people and then letting an election decide what happened. We're a representative republic. The media has joined forces with people who hold in contempt the expressed opinion of the people of the United States and do their best to thwart it and object to it, roll it back, undermine it, however you want to describe it. Well, in the midst of all this, we have these Trump supporters. And one thing holds true. The media hasn't learned it, and I doubt that they ever will because of their own arrogance and hubris. You just heard Gina. She knows what's going on. She's followed every bit of this, just as you have. She knows everything they're saying about Mike Flynn. She knows everything they're saying about Trump. She knows everything they're saying about Trump colluding with the Russians. She knows every lie they're telling, and guess what? It hasn't moved her an inch. She is just as glued and wedded to Donald Trump as she was at any time during the campaign. They have not succeeded in driving a wedge between Trump and his supporters and his voters, no matter what. And they will continue to fail because they have nothing to do with Trump's success. They have been trying to undermine Donald Trump from the moment he got into the race. And he has triumphed over them at every turn, and they can't stand that either. And they've realized they alone don't have the power to get rid of Trump. So now it's joined forces with the deep state, the sabotage going on with the Obama army that is working in quiet and invisibility within the shadow government, if you will. And even that is not distancing Trump supporters from him. They know full well what's happening, and they're infuriated by it, and they're furious. Now, there is some frustration. You heard it. That's why I said I think the recipe for Trump, or the solution here, double down on the domestic agenda. There's nothing stopping him. All this Flynn stuff, they can't stop him from rolling up sleeves and moving faster on Obamacare and tax cuts. Get it done. Start on it. Executive orders, legislation, whatever it takes. And do it quick before the Republicans have a chance to join the deep state. Because do not doubt me. This isn't Republican versus Democrat. This is not right versus left right now. This is not conservative versus populist. This is establishment globalist. America is not first to those of us who believe America is first. This is a establishment, anti-establishment fight that's going on. And the people in the establishment come from both parties. They work in all of the bureaucracies. They are elected and unelected. Like one of the famous ones is this, what was his name, Lois Lerner at the IRS, totally unelected. Refusing to grant tax-exempt status to Tea Party organizations for purposes of fundraising during a campaign. That's the shadow government. That's Obama sabotaging the will of the people. That's the Democrat Party dealing with the fact that they can't win at the ballot box in national elections. That's how the Democrat Party deals with the fact that they have continued to lose seats and elections since Obama became president. So it's not right, left, conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican. I mean, it is in certain things, but what we have here is the establishment, and this is all predicted, circling the wagons, doing everything they can, because Trump started out doing what he said he was going to do. We got the executive order on immigration. We had this, we had that. He came out of the gates like Secretariat. And they said, whoa, whoa. So they went and got a judge in Seattle. Said, you can't do that. And they found the libs in the Ninth Circus to back up the judge. You can't do that. Besides, the case hadn't even been heard yet. They just told the president he can't do it because they don't like him. That's who they are. That's not America. Whatever you think Flynn did, the people trying to stop Flynn, the people trying to stop Trump, they pose a greater threat to what you think this country is than anything Donald Trump has in mind or anything Mike Flynn had. Donald Trump doesn't pose a single threat to the greatness of America. You might have some people disagree with populism and anti-globalism and so forth, but Donald Trump has no desire to undermine America. They do. Donald Trump has no design to transform America. Donald Trump doesn't think America is second rate. Donald Trump doesn't think America is guilty. Donald Trump doesn't think America owes people things. Donald Trump doesn't think that the borders ought to be wide open so that anybody who wants here can come here because we've screwed them sometime in the past. Donald Trump doesn't believe that the Constitution is a suicide pact. They do. That's what this fight is. It just so happens that most of the Democrats happen to be aligned with the America is the problem in the world side. And most of the pro-Trumpers happen to believe that America is the solution to the problems in the world. The globalists, the establishment, they think America isn't particularly exceptional and should be no different than any other state in the world, subject to whatever a global authority might say. The United Nations, for example. Donald Trump doesn't think that, nor do we. This is a huge, huge fight. This is the one chance. This is, in many of our lifetimes, this is it. This is the only chance, the best chance we're going to have to roll this stuff back. But at the same time, the people on the opposite side of this know full well that this is the last chance we might have, and they've got to destroy us. They've got to keep this from happening. They know full well that if they can beat this back, that they will succeed in transforming America and that there will not be any serious threats down the road, even though they can't win elections. Stop and think about that. The people that can't win elections outside of Barack Obama, the people on the Democrats who cannot win elections, who do not have the votes to stop Donald Trump at all, in a constitutional sense, have to now behave outside the Constitution in order to stop the duly elected president of the United States, about whom they can produce no evidence that his election was fraudulent. Back after this. While the world is on fire all around us, we fight the flames without fear, ladies and gentlemen. And now back to the phones. This is Larry in San Antonio. Larry, welcome to the EIB network, sir. Hello.
Mega dittos, Russian. Thanks a lot for having me. I wanted to call you about the Russian spy ship that everybody's all of a sudden breaking out in a sweat about. I was in submarine service for 28 years, and every place we went, leaving port, there was a Russian spy ship that would follow us out until we dove. This is nothing new. Now the press is making it like it's all Donald Trump's fault that we have spies and everything else. And I'm really sick and tired of it. They're not reporting the news correctly.
He's exactly right. I want to thank you on that, Lair. The Russians have had a trawler. The only difference, this is the farthest north it's been in a while, but the Russians have had a trawler. And do you people remember a movie, The Russians Are Coming, back in the 60s? It was based on the fact that a Russian sub spying on us lost power. It was a comedy. And they put ashore some town in Maine, and the citizens of Maine ended up loving the Russians and so forth. The Russians, they had been lied to about what Americans were, and they couldn't believe what they found when they actually came ashore in America. It was a funny movie. But Russian trawlers and spies have been off the East Coast for years, 30, 40, 50 years. It is nothing new. The drive-bys are counting on the fact that the low-information voter doesn't know this. And so this is how it works. There's a Russian trawler. It's close to the East Coast of the United States. What's it doing there? Now, what the media wants you to think, it's either friendly, it's there to protect Trump, it's Putin looking out for Trump, or else it's Russia getting ready to launch an attack, collecting data on us, because they really wanted Hillary, and they know that Trump stole the election, and Trump making it look like Russia helped him steal the election, and they don't like being accused of this. And so the Russians are threatening America, and it wouldn't be happening if it weren't for Orange Head being in the White House. That's what they want you to think. Do you know the Russians, ever since Obama, and I think this might have even happened with Bush, the Russian primary delivery system in the air for bombs is called the Bear bomber. And it is a huge 4-engine, gigantic albatross of an airplane. And they've been flying over the U.S., close to Alaska, close to the U.S. border. They've been buzzing us easily for 10 years. Loaded Russian Bear bombers. It is Putin trying to recapture the glory of the old Soviet Union, which imploded, of course, with the fall of the Berlin Wall many, many moons ago. And so this is just Putin beating his chest, but the media knows this. Whether it's this ship or others, the Russians have been trawling the East Coast. And by the way, so did the Germans during World War II. Did you know that there were actually Russian soldiers caught in Kentucky in World War II? Well, hell's bells, Rush. What, you mean there were Nazi soldiers? And that's right. Well, how'd they get here? I guess they snuck in. The Russians have been trawling off the coast of the United States with ships like this for the longest. And the New York Times that they're having kittens over the claim the Russians were doing cruise missile tests in violation of the latest arms treaty. And so are the Iranians. You know, the New York Times any day of the week is scared to death of nuclear weapons, except when Iran's on the verge of getting one, and then they want to celebrate for some fool reason. So why did Trump either get rid of Flynn or let Flynn resign? Because as Trump said earlier today, the media really mistreated Flynn. He's a great guy. Well, then why get the broom? Send the guy out. There's got to be more to this. And we will explore this when we get back, my friends. Sooner than you think. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. I am Rush Limbaugh, meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. Okay, so it's breaking news out there. CNN, fake news, is reporting that top Senate Republicans have urged the White House to withdraw the nomination of Puzder. What's his name? Puzder. He's the, what is it, trade? Same difference, trade, labor, what difference it makes. He's the labor secretary nominee. And apparently their top Republicans have told the White House that there are 4 firm no votes, and there could be up to 12 votes on the fence. and say, rather than run the risk of having a nominee voted down White House, why don't you just pull the guy? By the way, New York Daily News just posted, I kid you not, the New York Daily News just posted the succession list for who would become president if Trump is incapacitated. And, of course, it's Pence, then after Pence. And they keep going till they get to a Democrat who would be in line to be, and that would have to be the House or Senate minority leader. It's way, way, way down the list. So anyway, the Democrats have intended to take a scalp from one of Trump's cabinet nominees. They thought it was going to be Betsy DeVos. They really thought they were going to stop her. But it looks like Puzder, and his crime against humanity is that he is supposed to have one time hired an illegal alien, which, of course, the Democrats would never, never stand for. Wait a minute, that's what they want everybody to do. Do they not? The Democrats want everybody to hire illegal. The Democrats want every illegal alien possible to come here, be here, and be allowed to stay here. But Puzder may have once hired one. It's a glaring hypocrisy of our government in action. Anyway, we'll see how that falls out. Also, Chris Matthews, I didn't see it. I don't want the audio. I don't need the audio. I can just tell you this as easily as playing it for you. Chris Matthews got really confused during the joint press conference today because Trump brought his family. And Matthews doesn't understand that. He said, I don't get this. As a strange administration. Family means a lot to Trump. It's a strange administration. Family means a lot to Trump. That must be an odd thing for a Democrat, that family means a lot. It must be. Why comment on it? And then Matthews said, it's almost like the Romanovs. Why did you go all the way, Chris, and just say the Borgias? Why just clear the decks and just say it's just like the Borgias? Rodrigo Borgia, the Pope, and his daughter Lucrezia could be the Ivanka character. Why don't you just go all the way? Why stop at the Romanovs? He said, why? They bring all the family, these major state events. Why is Ivanka there? Why is Melania there at a state press conference? He's always bringing the family and lording it over us. This sort of regal manner of the guy. Regal manner? I thought the guy was a reprobate. I thought he was a bull in a china shop. And all of a sudden he's a regal guy like a Romanov. And what's Melania doing in there? Well, what's Ivanka doing? She's obviously selling her products. What else would she be doing in there, Chris? Just jam it in a little further. Why would they not be there? They got, when Trump had the ceremony to announce the choice of Judge Gorsuch, there were family members there, and the press blew up at that. Why is his family in there? What's the family doing there? Why would a family member get a front row seat to a judge nominated? Why would that? It's as though tight-knit families offend the Democrats. Children who admire their father and want to work with, that's not normal. What, for Democrats, what is normal? Then, I just love it. I just love the way they get so irritated. One thing about family, they're not going to leak. And if they do leak, you can do something about it. because it's family. Okay, here's a telephone number, folks. For the remainder of the busy broadcast today, it's 800-282-2882 and the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Oh, there's Chris Matthews on Fox. I've agreed to appear on Fox News Sunday, this Sunday, by the way. And I sent them a note early this morning at 2 o'clock in the morning. I sent him a note, and I said, Chris, look. With hella popping the way it is, if you need my slot, for some Washington inside newsmaker, I'll be happy to bump out. And they sent me back, and no. We're going to book you. We're going to announce it today. So I figured, well, if they're going to announce it, I can mention it. So it's the Fox Broadcast Network, not Fox News. It'll air on Fox News later in the day, but it goes live at 9 Eastern. At least that's what time we have to be here and tape it. Yeah, it is live at 9 Eastern for those that carry it then. Now, back to this New York Times story. There's one more thing in this whole Flynn business. And let me restate something just to provide an umbrella for which the next comments fall. Remember that what is driving all of this, the story about Michael Flynn, the fact that he had to resign, that there's trouble there, all of this is based on the people that write the news narratives every day, that would be the Democrats and the media, believing and trying to convince as many people as possible that the election was fraudulent, that the election was hacked, that the Russians hacked it, and that Trump worked with them to hack the election, and Trump worked with them to hack Hillary's emails. And it is on this basis that the attack on Trump is taking place. The media and the shadow government of Obama, the deep state bureaucrats, want you to believe the election was not on the up and up, that it was rigged because of Russian involvement. And we know this, they are telling us, because Flynn talked to the Russian ambassador. Yeah. Flynn talked to the Russian ambassador, and that means they had to discuss sanctions. And if they discussed sanctions, that means that Flynn was discussing with the Russians removing Obama's sanctions. And that means there was collusion, and that means, and that means, and that means. And on and on and on. So, the fact is there's no evidence, and there never has been any evidence for any of that. There is no evidence the Russians had anything to do with votes, either casting them or counting them. There is no evidence the Russians had anything to do with any aspect of the election. There's none. Nobody's found it. They've looked. The media, the deep state, the intelligence people that are plugged in as holdovers from the Obama administration, they have searched, they have interviewed, they've wiretapped, they've hacked, they've monitored, they've looked everywhere they can, and they can't find any evidence. And the outrage, the latest outrage, is that last night the New York Times sent out a breaking news alert at 9:15 Eastern with a report that their sources had found contact between Trump campaign officials and the Russians during the campaign. This lit up Twitter. It lit up the news everywhere. It lit up the Facebook news feed. It lit up the Kremlin. It lit up everywhere. I looked at it and said, damn, because I knew it was bogus, because they ran the same story back in October. Sure as shooting, they run their story this morning based on that news alert. And in the third paragraph, they admit that their sources have not been able to provide 1 ounce of evidence showing collusion between Trump and the Russians on the election. And furthermore, they can't even prove that the contacts between Trump people and the Russians during the campaign were even about the election. It is totally made up. It is full-fledged, 100% fake news, including the premise that the election was hacked by the Russians and Hillary should have won. And it's on that basis they want everybody to believe that all they're doing is the honorable thing of correcting a mistake, that Hillary should be president. They may not be able to make that happen, but they can sure get rid of the guy who rigged it, and that would be Trump. And that's what all of this is, and that's why Flynn is gone, because they were able to make enough noise to make enough people nervous. I think it was a mistake to let Flynn go. I think that it was an unnecessary cave, and I think it opens up additional opportunities for other scalps to be sought. I mean, once you give these people one person, they're not satisfied, as you can see. Well, this is kind of in the weeds, but really not. Within the same framework that I have just described, there have been people who were privy to the phone conversation between Flynn and the Russian ambassador. The reason is that the NSA was tapping the ambassador's phone calls. He's a bad guy. He's an enemy. And so we legally, FISA court permission, have been monitoring the Russian ambassador's phone calls. The Russian ambassador knows this. I mean, anybody doing this knows that the NSA is tagging them and following them. There's a transcript of the call that they will not release. The shadow government, the Obama shadow government, the deep state, the intelligence bureaucrats will not release the full transcript of the phone call. They're only releasing little bits here and little bits there to make their case. And one of the things the New York Times reported on that they were looking for in this phone call. Well, let me just read it to you. From the New York Times story, Obama officials asked the FBI, that's who was monitoring the calls, the NSA, FBI, see the transcript. The Obama officials asked the FBI if a quid pro quo had been discussed on the call between Flynn and the Russian ambassador. And the answer came back, no, according to one of the officials, who, like all the others, asked not to be named. Discussing delicate communications, the topic of sanctions came up, they were told, but there was no deal. Quid pro quo. A quid pro quo, had there been a quid pro quo, then Flynn would be in jail today and Trump would be under impeachment. That's what they were desperately hoping for. They asked the people who had the transcript of the call, was there a quid pro quo? The quid pro quo in this case that they were hoping to hear was an offer from Flynn to lift the sanctions that Obama had placed if the Russians would do something for Trump. They were desperate for that to be part of the call. They were desperate for Flynn to have done that. The fact that they believed Flynn was that stupid, that Flynn would be that lazy to actually offer the Russians a deal, they were desperately hoping, and the New York Times makes clear here that the deep state players, the Obama shadow government, were hoping and praying that that's what Flynn had done. But Flynn didn't. There was no quid pro quo. Flynn did not offer to lift the sanctions that Obama had just placed. This phone call, by the way, took place on the day Obama expelled 35 Russian diplomats. There was no quid pro quo to bring them back. In other words, Flynn did not promise the Russians anything after Trump was inaugurated in exchange for anything. There was no quid pro quo. But leading up to this admission, the news all week has been alluding to a quid pro quo. And was there one? Many experts believe there simply had to have been. Experts that we've talked to here at the New York Times are assured a quid pro quo was discussed. Then Trump lets Flynn go, and wow, there really must have been one, but there wasn't. Once again, no evidence Flynn did anything wrong. There's no evidence that Flynn did anything wrong. They were dying to make this quid pro quo thing stick. They knew they didn't have one, but they could get the next best thing. They could induce people on Trump's team to act like they were guilty of a quid pro quo. That's what all this pressure did. That's what all of this attention that Trump was getting, all the pressure from all the drive-bys and all of the shadow government people was to make it look like the Trump people were hiding something. And they came along and get rid of Flynn, and it furthers the idea there is something to hide when there's not. And you know what else? Remember that BuzzFeed story where there is this dossier that was put together on Trump that not one word is true? And BuzzFeed released it anyway so the American people could at least see the kind of stuff going on. What it really was a fake collection of allegations about Trump that the intel people wanted to show him as an example of the kind of bad stuff out there so that he would take a meeting with them. That dossier was totally fake, exposed as fake. Everybody knows it. And yet the New York Times is still hanging their hat on it. As part of the inquiry, the FBI is also trying to assess the credibility of the information contained in a dossier that was given to the Bureau last year by a former British intelligence operative. The dossier contained a raft of allegations. This was exposed as a fraudulent thing 3 weeks ago, and here it shows up in the drive-by media yesterday as something that's possibly still legitimate, that is still being examined. It isn't. It's done. It was fake to begin with. The people that made it up admitted so, and yet it's included in a New York Times story yesterday as something that remains possible, allegations of Trump misconduct. And so it is, folks, this is criminal what is happening here. And it is far, far, far more dangerous to the Constitution and to our country than anything Trump has even contemplated doing. It's not even close. Okay, here's Joel in Brooklyn. Joel, great to have you on the EIB network. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me on the line. I just wanted to tell you that I was till recently a die-hard liberal. Funny story was that I had a friend that I go at night to school with. I'm actually a youngster. And he told me this guy on the radio is giving out free iPhones. I told him, what? That's how I started listening to you. And I started listening to you only because of that. And then he just got into my head, and you literally took over my views in life, and I turned my views around 360 degrees. Now, I don't need an iPhone. I don't need anything else. I just need you to listen to you, and you're literally my mentor in life. Now I can see headlines. I look differently at headlines. I see CNN headlines totally different. It looks to me that it's written in red blood. That's how it looks to me now.
Well, I appreciate that. So it was the fact that this guy told you to give away iPhones, and that's cool. You listened, and your mind changed right on the spot almost, it sounds like.
Changed almost, I guess it was 4 or 5 weeks ago. It changed to 360 degree.
Man, I tell you, that's music to my ears, because folks, that's one of the reasons I do this. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm not just doing this to hear my head rattle. And that's great. Do you want a new iPhone? I have some left over. You want an iPhone 7 or 7 Plus?
Oh, my gosh.
I'm sure. Absolutely. Okay, 7 or 7 Plus. You tell me which one.
7 Plus.
7 Plus. And I got one that's unlocked. It'll work on any carrier that you have. You have a color preference?
No, negative.
Okay, fine. Then I'll send you the prettiest one. I'll send you the prettiest one. I think is jet black. I'll send you. Just hang on. Don't go away so that Mr. Snerdley can get you. And give him a real one. You're from Brooklyn. Give him your real address so that we can get this to you. And thank you, Joel. A man, a legend, a way of life. You know this guy, Evan McMullin, was he from Utah? And wasn't he one of the great GOP hopes to unseat Trump? When they had the primaries, wasn't he going to run out there? And he was going to stop Trump from winning a nomination, but stop Trump from winning Utah. Right. Yeah, I never heard of Evan McMullin before that, but Evan McMullin apparently, he did launch a third-party run against Trump, and he's continuing this fake news that he's got a tweet out there that Trump, that the president of the United States has been co-opted or corrupted or something, I forget what it is, by essentially by being in bed with Russia. And he's on CNN. It's all these Republicans. I just saw Republican senators. Well, no, I'm sitting here thinking, how much do I want to tell you about what I know here? I saw Roy Blunt. I saw a bunch of other Republicans and Senator McCain. He was right there, yes. all suggesting there needed to be full-fledged investigation into this Flynn business. Flynn needs to be brought up here, and we need to depose Flynn. We need to find everything. Flynn knew what was going on. It is clear, and it should not be a surprise to anybody. There's a whole bunch of establishment Republicans who have just been waiting for what they think is the time to break away and make a move on Trump. And they're doing it under the guise of saving the Republican Party, or in some cases, saving America from the incompetent boob that is Donald Trump. But here's this fake news about Russia and Trump being in bed together during the campaign, hacking the election. And these guys are all acting like they believe the story, which folks, it offends me greatly. These guys have the intelligence to know that this is all fake news. They have the ability to know. This kind of stuff is used against them all the time by the media. At any rate, I wanted to answer these questions that Chris Matthews had. Why was Trump's family up there? Who do they think they are? The Romanovs? What is this family togetherness business? What poor Melania, she can't win. I don't know if you're aware of this, but last week the media were in an uproar, sneering that Melania ditched the Japanese prime minister's wife in Washington, which was not true, and that she was ridiculously shirking her first lady duties by not being in Washington at the White House. And there were those stories out there that Melania, and then there were accompanying stories. Is there trouble in paradise? Does Melania want no part of what her husband's doing? Does Melania know her husband's a phony? Does Melania know her husband's a fake and a fraud? Does Melania know this isn't going to last? Does Melania know that there's no reason to go to Washington because Trump's not going to be there himself in a couple of months? All this kind of stuff's out there. And then the next pictures I saw were Melania Trump and Mrs. Japanese Prime Minister walking around a Japanese garden somewhere. And that's right down in Delray Beach. And they were feeding the poi fish, and they were throwing things in the air for the insects to grab, whatever they were doing. Looking at flowers and stuff. What first ladies do going through a garden. Oh, isn't that lovely? Yes, it's such a wonderful aroma. Can we pick something? No, the cameras are on us. Whatever goes on in these gardens is what's going on. But I was of the impression that Melania was shirking her duties. And then there she is with Mrs. Japanese First Lady. And then there she was at dinner with her husband, the president, and Mrs. Japanese First Lady, and a Japanese Prime Minister. And the owner of the New England Patriots, Chris Ruddy, was at that dinner, very, very tight with Trump. So what I'm hearing about Mrs. Trump isn't true for what I see. And then the reason that Melania was there today at the joint press conference between her husband and Bibi Netanyahu is that Mrs. Netanyahu was there. And so the protocol was that Mrs. Netanyahu was there. Well, Mrs. Trump should be there. And Melania stood next to her husband, waiting for the Netanyahus to arrive, and greeted them upon their arrival, which is what normally happens. Yet they say she's shirking her duties. Ivanka was there because her husband happens to be Trump's number one advisor on Israel. Ivanka's husband is a guy named Jared Kushner, and he's Trump's number one advisor on Israel. And Ivanka is Trump's number one advisor on fashion. I'm just kidding. I'm just making a... Do you believe that they... No. Oh, yeah. Well, but the New York... That was Carl Bernstein's son. Carl Bernstein's son admitted to being the one that called Melania a hooker. But he did it at a party. He did it at a social gathering, not an official news function. And anyway, Times reprimanded him because if you're going to say that, say it in the paper, not at a party. No, they didn't reprimand him for that, but I wouldn't have been surprised if they had. But they did reprimand him, so he came out and admitted it and so forth. And then but the Office of Government Ethics has recommended a full-fledged investigation and admonishment of Kellyanne Conway for urging people to go out there and buy Ivanka products while standing in the White House with the White House logo behind her. They say it's a clear violation of ethics that no government official shall endorse, suggest, or recommend any product. And Kellyanne clearly did. In fact, even said, I'm going to do a little commercial here for Ivanka. Now, that's all true. That's not kosher. But I want to put some of this in perspective for you, folks. The left loves to say that what their protesters engage is simple dissent. Time-honored, wonderful American dissent. Why our people are engaged in the very behavior that led to the founding of America. Time-honored dissent from authority. And so when Nordstrom decides, for example, to cancel the Ivanka product line, the left chalks it up to, well, you know, they have made a business decision, and they start speculating on maybe Ivanka's stuff is no good. And then they speculate, maybe Ivanka's stuff isn't popular. Maybe Ivanka's stuff is way overblown. Maybe Nordstrom was tired of losing money stocking it, and that's not what happened. I will guarantee you what happened was not normal day-to-day dissent or business. You have a bunch of left-wing bullies, I will guarantee you, that were intimidating and accusing and threatening Nordstrom that if they didn't get rid of Ivanka stuff, that all kinds of hell was going to happen to them. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. And that's not business. Now, when something like that, let me ask you, when something like that happens, let's take Ivanka out of this and put you into it. I want every one of you to imagine that you're an entrepreneur and you have created a product of some kind. And you've invented it, and you've found a way to mass produce it, you've marketed it, and it is in various stores. Maybe it's in a chain of stores, whatever you imagine. And it's going great guns. And then somebody finds out that you happen to be a conservative or Republican. And then all of a sudden, all those stores selling your product are suddenly inundated with tweets and emails from people threatening to never set foot in a store again, never buy anything in the store until your product is removed. And then you dig deep and you find out that 99% of the tweets and 99% of the emails are being sent by people who don't shop at the store anyway and don't even live in the town where the store is. But yet the company gets intimidated, gets nervous, gets scared, and they tell you, we've got to stop selling your product because we're being threatened and we don't want to put up with it. Are you just supposed to sit there and say, well, time-honored American dissent is destroying my business, and if I respond in any way, I'm being unethical? Is that because that's exactly what's going on. Now, maybe Kellyanne Conway should not have said from the White House, buy Ivanka products. But my point is this. What they did was engage politics for politics, because I am here to tell you, I don't know. I'm using intelligence guided by my own experience. And I'm just telling you that the odds are Nordstrom got rid of Ivanka's stuff because of politics, one way or the other, political pressure, or maybe management at Nordstrom didn't want to, whatever it is. And I think it's not right that the left gets to inject their politics into business, and it's still called business, when the right then tries to respond and inject their and the right can't, because you're not allowed to infuse politics into business. But the left gets away with doing it. So what are people supposed to do? Just let the left have total control over what's sold where and what isn't sold where? So I know what Kellyanne was doing. She's simply defending Ivanka, who happens to be the daughter of her boss, against a totally unwarranted, not business-related political attack. And because she did it with the White House logo, because she's in the press room, it does convey an endorsement by the government, which government ethics laws do not allow. Now, OGE, the Office of Government Ethics, they don't have any power to accuse, to charge, and to try anybody. So all they can do is point out so-and-so violated ethics rules. It's up to others to then take action on it. In this case, it'd probably be Congress. I don't know who. Federal Trade Commission. I have no idea who. I don't know what's going to come of it. But that's what I think happened. And when it happens to you, it totally changes the perspective of things. As a conservative, you're supposed to sit there. Well, that's just the breaks of the game. The left gets to infect and corrupt business all day long, and it's called Great American Dissent. And if you respond to it, you're being unethical. It's just another way that the playing field is in no way level. Back after this. What happened to that? Oh, is that guy John in Indianapolis? John, great to have you on the program. Welcome to the EIB Network. Hello.
Mr. Limbaugh, hey, how are you, sir?
Fine and dandy, fine and dandy. Great to have you here with us as the world burns all around us.
Well, I want to talk about the first hour of the program where you said only 63 million people support Donald Trump. I'd like to bring up Brexit because I believe that number is null and void. I believe that there are a lot of Trump supporters all across the globe because of Brexit. And now that Brexit is not a non-news story.
Yeah, but I don't dispute that. I know that Trump has all kinds of support all over the world, but I was talking about domestic support and the numbers that Trump would need to resist any of these efforts that are mounting up to destroy him. And when it comes to the politics of getting rid of Donald Trump, the Brexit crowd that supports him is not going to matter to the Democrats and Republicans in this country that might someday make a move on Trump. It's the 63 million. And this is something, you know what? It is assumed those 63 million, if Trump goes, they're just going to sit home and go, let me tell you, this 63 million is a different group of people. And they're not just going to sit idly by and watch the man they elected be shoved out of office. I'm just warning you people out there in the deep state, shadow government, you're not dealing with who you think you're dealing with here. So I just watching Fox, the CEO of Under Armour coming under attack by athletes because he said something supportive of Trump. Remind me about this tomorrow because we're out of time here. I won't forget, but remind me anyway.